Good afternoon, and köszönöm szépen for the award and for the invitation, and congratulations to the Socialist Party, to its leadership, and particularly to Zita Gurmai for organizing this event. I stand here very humbled in front of you because I see how much effort, how much dedication, and how much responsibility for the future of Hungary you have been investing in your work to promote women, gender equality, social justice, and an environment that will not be discriminatory and that will provide opportunities for all the Hungarian population. I would like also to thank the Socialist Party of Hungary for all the support it has given to the Central and Eastern European Network for Gender Issues, because I see this award as a recognition of 25 years of our work on gender equality in Southeastern Europe, particularly. And why am I saying this is because, as one of the Croatian members of European Parliament said, in 1990, when the regime changed, democracy came, countries were opened up, we were looking towards a very bright future. A future where our human rights will be respected, where there will be a pluralistic and democratic dialogue, where the benefits of the market economy will flow to all our population. And today we ask ourselves, are we there, or were we there, and were we too utopian and idealistic that this will happen, including on the questions of equality between women and men, let alone addressing the question of our patriarchal societies. And the root of the problem is that it's patriarchy and domination. And that's why I would like to thank the Socialist Party of Hungary that has supported the Central Eastern European Network once we were founded in 1994, by the way, in my kitchen in New York. So kitchens are also important when we start cooking and knitting, and we make better societies. And particularly, I would like to thank two men. One is Kovács László, he was here a minute ago, and Szabó Vilmos, who were with us throughout this. Yes, László, and I don't know where Vilmos is, but they were actually supporting us here, and we had an office in Budapest, a functioning office with our great feminist Sonja Locker, and politician, that worked for 4 years in Budapest. Thank you very much. And of course, I need to not talk that much about Zita Gurmai. Zita, you have been the champion, and you will remain the champion, and you are tireless, and you're a force of nature for women, and we really love you and respect you for all that you have done. But neither of us should be complacent about our achievements. There is so much to be done. And each one, if I look at this hall, each one individually has a role to play, whether you're playing it at your local level, at your municipal level, or you are playing it at the country level, or in Europe, or in the world. We all should work together. And I think this is my political message today. We are stronger when we are together, one. Two, we are stronger when we are clear on our messages. Last year, we had a discussion on generational dialogue and solidarity between the young generations and the older generations. And it was very interesting how the younger generations perceive the older generations, and how they could try to understand each other better. We have seen that older generations are more disciplined in going and voting. The younger generations are more skeptical towards the political establishment and not so disciplined to go and vote. But at the same time, there was one question or one perspective that was the same for all of them. And what was the perspective? The perspective is that we are unhappy with our societies, that our societies are getting more and more divided along economic lines, along social welfare lines, along opportunities, along equality, along the gender divide, or the lack of equality between women and men, and of course a lack of respect for the opinions of the younger generations, which will have to bear the brunt, both women, young women and men, of what type of society we work towards. And this is why these elections are so important on the 8th of April and elsewhere, and this seems to be a very election-oriented year, are so important that we pass these messages. The thing that united them all is the concern about our daily life. What does that mean? We are individualistically very much concerned about how we live in our village, in our local community, in our municipality, or then up in the country. And these are individual issues that have collective repercussions. For instance, violence against women. If you take the Istanbul Convention, which at this point I would say is not perfect, but it's the best progressive thing that we have at this point to push and to pressure our governments with it, but in a more holistic way. And I'll give you an example. We talk, and I'll also tell you why I think that the conservatives and the clericals and the right wing has a problem with the Istanbul Convention. I have here, I have interesting data on who has signed and who has ratified. The most conservative countries have not ratified. The others have signed. Some of the conservative countries like Poland have ratified but put amendments or reservations on certain parts. And why don't they like it? They don't like it because, as it was said this morning, the ideology, the vista of the right is that basically women are the bearers of the society, the crux of the society, but without power. What does that mean? That means that men are in the decision-making positions and women are there to make children, to keep the home, the three corners of the home, and to reproduce the next generations. So they have an educational role, they have a social role to play in terms of keeping the community going and cooking and taking care of the children, caregiving to the elderly, and so on and so forth. But they're not seen as agents and actors in transforming our societies into democratic, into socially just, and into welfare societies. And so the difference, and and the reason why they are, for instance, in Croatia, they are not signing, they're not ratifying, although the Prime Minister now said he will put it for the vote to the Parliament, but the Parliament has still the majority, which is right. They are not ratifying it because they are saying they have a problem with gender equality. Imagine, they have a problem with gender equality. The city of Zagreb passed a resolution which prohibits the use of the term gender equality. They only talk about women and men and the families. The rest doesn't exist. And gender equality is basically this social term, social construct, which talks about the relationship and the partnership between women and men for a better society. No, they don't take that, because this is not the role of women to be in partnership. The role of women is different. And this is both in terms of a very conservative, very clerical approach, but it is also the remnant of a very patriarchal approach. It also rests on a very patriarchal approach. So so they have a problem with gender equality, which if you then demystify this term, if you take it like an onion and you start unpeeling the onion, you will find out that actually the question of equality between women and men, or gender equality as a social term, a construct, ideology, is basically talking about our lives, our daily lives. That's not, they say, well, this is a feminist thing, forget it. No, that's not it. It's about what type of society, what type of life do we as individuals and as both women and men have to, should have, can play, and can contribute. And this is where I think the discourse needs to change. Let me give you the good news, which I see the good news. This 8th of March, 2 days ago, if you are going to go through the various media, the websites, the papers, from The Guardian to the New York Times to the local papers, you have seen two things happening. One, the Istanbul Convention, its ratification or signing, is one of the most talked about issues on the 8th of March. Precisely because it distills the relationships in our societies, that between women and men, that between that within a socially just and responsible society, and so it's become a very big deal now. So Istanbul Convention is very high up on the agenda, but distilling this patriarchal or breaking up this patriarchal myth, we are actually looking at all the issues relating to women in decision-making. And I must say, Hungary is the country with the worst figures for women in parliament. And that should certainly change. There are other countries in the region who are doing very, very well. The gender pay gap, we talk about the gender pay gap, but it's all about the essence of relations. So the progressive answers are basically on the table. We have the philosophy, we have the ideology, we know what we want. What we need is activism. We need, at all levels of institutions within societies, to advocate for that and ask for the governments to implement. They do not want to implement because it means taking away resources from what they see as their priorities. And this is where, the rubber hits the road when it comes to money, when it comes to positions in the government, and when it comes to institutions. I will finish with that, and I'm sure the panel will be much more enlightening than I am on the Istanbul Convention itself. But let me just say that this 8th of March I have dedicated to two, one a memory and one a future. The memory was of my great aunt, who was heading the anti-fascist women's group in her village, who was supposed to be shot by the German fascists, with a baby in her stomach and a baby in her hand and a little boy in her hand. She managed to flee and save herself with the help of the villagers. But after 1990, somewhere at the end of the 90s, her granddaughter was trafficked into prostitution to London and was killed on a London street. So one can ask oneself the question. But the future is a group of young students, a class, from the city of Vukovar that was destroyed in the war of the 1990s, where boys and girls made a video on how they see the 8th of March. And they were so progressive that they made me cry. I could sign every word they said, and they were 12 and 13 years old. So this is the generation we have to look forward to. Thank you very much. Thank you.